The last day. The scent of summer was thick in the air as the bell rang, signaling the end of the final day of school. Laughter and cheers erupted through the halls as students raced to begin their long-awaited vacation. For many, this was a day of freedom and celebration, but for Class 12B, it was something else entirely. Miss Darla, their homeroom teacher, stood at the front of the classroom, her smile strained. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice faltering. "Before you go, there's one final tradition we must honor." The class groaned in unison. "It's just a harmless scavenger hunt," she said, her eyes darting nervously toward the window, where dark clouds seemed to have materialized out of nowhere. "A little fun before you officially say goodbye to these halls forever." Darla handed out folded sheets of paper, each containing cryptic instructions. The students murmured among themselves, exchanging nervous glances. "Why now?" whispered Julia, the class overachiever, to her best friend, Malik. "We've never done this before." "Maybe it's just a quirky new thing," Malik replied, though his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. A strange start. The instructions were simple. Visit 7 specific locations around the school, collect a token from each, and return before sundown. The catch? The school would be locked down during the hunt, and no one would be allowed to leave early. As the students dispersed, Darla's parting words echoed ominously in the hall. "Stick together, and whatever you do, don't go to the basement." "Why would she even say that?" scoffed Lucas, the class clown. "It's like begging us to go there." "No one's going to the basement," Julia snapped, her grip tightening on her paper. "Let's just get this over with." The first stop was the library, a cavernous room filled with the scent of old books and the hum of fluorescent lights. The clue led them to an ancient ledger tucked away on the highest shelf. Malik climbed the ladder to retrieve it, but as his hand brushed the book's spine, a cold draft swept through the room. "Did anyone else feel that?" Malik asked, his voice unsteady. The others shook their heads. Still, they hurried to leave, unease settling over them like a heavy fog. The descent begins. Each location brought more of the same, an eerie silence, sudden chills, and a growing sense of dread. By the time they reached the art room, the 5th location, the group was visibly shaken. "This is stupid," said Ava, her usual bravado gone. "Let's just break a window and leave." "Do you want to risk getting expelled on the last day?" Julia retorted, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. As they argued, Lucas wandered toward a corner of the room, drawn by a faint whisper. "Hey guys," he called out, "check this out." In his hand was a paintbrush, its bristles soaked in a deep crimson. "Looks like someone didn't clean up," he joked, but his laughter died as the lights flickered. "Put that down," Julia said, her eyes wide. Lucas obliged, but the brush clattered to the floor, leaving a streak of red that seemed too fresh to be paint. The forbidden door. By the time they reached the 6th location, the gymnasium, the sun was dipping below the horizon, the vast space echoed with their footsteps, and the clue led them to a dusty trophy case. Inside was the 6th token, a tarnished coin. As Julia reached for it, the gym doors slammed shut. "Hello?" Malik called, his voice trembling. No response came, but faint footsteps echoed from somewhere above. "That's it," Ava said, backing toward the exit. "I'm done." But the door wouldn't budge. Julia tried her phone, but there was no signal. The group huddled together, their fear palpable. "One more location," Malik said, trying to sound brave. "Then we're out of here. The basement." The final clue led them to the very place Miss Darla had warned against. The basement. The group descended the creaking stairs, their flashlights flickering in the growing darkness. The basement was vast, with walls lined with rusting pipes and forgotten furniture. The air was thick with the stench of mildew, and the sound of dripping water echoed ominously. "Why would she send us here?" Julia whispered, her voice barely audible. In the center of the room stood a wooden chest, its surface carved with strange symbols. The final token lay atop it, a small, intricately designed key. "This has to be it," Malik said, stepping forward. As his fingers closed around the key, the chest shuddered. The symbols began to glow a sickly green and the air grew colder. "Put it back," Ava screamed. "Put it back!" But it was too late. The chest burst open, releasing a torrent of black smoke that filled the room. From within the smoke emerged a figure, tall, skeletal, and cloaked in shadow. "You've awakened me," it hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "And now, you will pay." The chase. The group scattered, each running blindly through the maze-like basement. Julia and Malik stuck together, their hands tightly clasped. "What is that thing?" Julia gasped, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," Malik replied, his voice shaking. "But we need to get out of here." They turned a corner and found themselves face to face with Miss Darla. Her eyes were empty, her smile unnatural. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice echoing as though it came from everywhere at once. "The ritual is incomplete." "What ritual?" Malik demanded, but Darla simply pointed behind them. The shadowy figure was closing in, its skeletal fingers outstretched. Julia screamed, pulling Malik into a nearby room. They slammed the door shut, but the creature's pounding shook the walls. The truth revealed. Inside the room, they found old documents scattered across a desk. The papers detailed a ritual meant to seal away an ancient evil, a ritual that required 7 tokens and the participation of an entire class. This wasn't a scavenger hunt, Julia realized, her voice trembling. It was a sacrifice. "But why us?" Malik asked. The answer came in the form of a name scrawled across the top of one of the documents. Miss Darla Rowe, class of 1987. "She's been doing this for years," Julia whispered. "Every class. Every year." The pounding stopped. An eerie silence filled the air. "We need to finish the ritual," Malik said. "It's the only way." The final stand. The instructions for the ritual were vague, but they managed to piece it together. The tokens had to be placed in a specific order around the chest, and a chant had to be recited. As they crept back into the main room, they found their classmates cornered by the creature. Lucas was sobbing, Ava was frozen in fear, and the others were nowhere to be seen. "Over here!" Julia shouted, drawing the creature's attention. As Malik began placing the tokens, the shadow lunged toward them. Julia screamed as it wrapped its bony fingers around her, lifting her off the ground. "Hurry!" she choked out. Malik placed the final token and began the chant. The room shook violently, and the creature released Julia, howling in rage. The symbols on the chest glowed once more, this time a brilliant white. The creature writhed, its form disintegrating into ash. With a deafening roar, it was sucked back into the chest, which slammed shut with a finality that left the room eerily quiet. Aftermath. The group emerged from the basement, battered and shaken, but alive. The school was silent, as though nothing had happened. Miss Darla was nowhere to be found. When the authorities arrived, the students tried to explain, but their story was dismissed as hysteria. The school was closed for good shortly after, its halls deemed unsafe. Years later, Julia would still wake up in the middle of the night, haunted by the sound of a chest slamming shut and the memory of Miss Darla's hollow smile. And somewhere, deep beneath the abandoned school, the chest still waits,